Definitely recommend going. Say whenever I'm ready. We're good to go. All right. So, hey everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about this. And first, I want to go over how you pronounce this. This isn't latex. You don't pronounce this latex like the material. The way I pronounce it is latex. Um, I've I did a little bit of research before this, and I think the way it's technically supposed to be pronounced is with kind of a at the end of it, kind of like loch, the 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 Scottish like name for some lakes. So I think it's supposed to be pronounced Latech, but I'm lazy, so I'm just going to pronounce it Latech. Anyway, moving on. If you've never heard of LaTeX, you don't know what it is, you can basically think of it as a markup language, kind of like Markdown or HTML, but it's a little bit more complicated and at the same time more powerful than either one of those. It can be used for something called typesetting, which is really just a fancy word for arranging stuff on a page for printing so it looks correct. This stuff could be text like paragraphs or headings, different sections, maybe if you have columns, images, things like that. And LaTeX will often do a better job at organizing your document, your page, than editors like Word or Google Docs or things like that. And this is particularly helpful for a resume, which I'll talk a bit about in a bit, because I don't know if you've ever messed with your resume a lot, sometimes it feels less like you're modifying the content of the resume and more like you're just fighting Word or Google Docs to get things to go right where you want them to go. That's a big issue that I had, which is why I switched to LaTeX for my resume. Also with LaTeX, when you're writing documents, the LaTeX document is typically written in plain text. So you can open up a text editor like Notepad if you want. VS Code has pretty good for support for LaTeX. But if you just want to get started, get your hands dirty with LaTeX, you can use this cool online editor called Overleaf. And surprise, that's actually what these slides are in. I wrote my slides in LaTeX and, well, my one slide in LaTeX. And this is what a little bit of LaTeX looks like. So before we go into doing resumes in LaTeX, I'll do a quick overview of how LaTeX works and the different parts of a LaTeX document. So I'll use these slides just to get started. With LaTeX, you can see here we've got some stuff like this is some actual text in here, but then we've got a bunch of these backslash things with all these brackets. And in LaTeX, kind of the building blocks of your document are these things called commands. And a command is just, it starts with a backslash and then whatever the command's name is, and then a series of arguments. So this is one command called document class. This is the command called large. Usually for a command, you'll have multiple different kinds of arguments. So you might have a command, let's say we have a command named command. It's really, really creative. You can have, usually you'll have a required argument in curly braces like that. Sometimes you might have optional parameters in square brackets, so you can provide them or you don't have to. But sometimes you'll also have multiple arguments or parameters to a command, and then you'll just have multiple curly brackets like that. And the parameters and arguments to commands can change how the command works. So one really common command that you'll actually see in almost every LaTeX document, every main LaTeX document, is document class. And what this does is define basically the general layout of the document. For this, we're using the slides document class, which is a built-in class for slides. You can see it gives us this nice square document, kind of like a PowerPoint. And then you can also provide, you could say, overall like general formatting changes in the optional parameters to document class. So here we're using the slides class, and we're saying we're going to have our slides be in landscape mode. You could also do things like change the font size globally in these optional parameters for your document class and do other stuff. If you're familiar with web development, you can think of a document class as kind of like your main CSS file that defines the style for your overall document. You can also have environments in LaTeX, and environments are created with these begin and end commands. And an environment is really just a way of saying, hey, this chunk of LaTeX code should be rendered in some different way. So for example, here we have an environment named slide. So that's just going to be a single slide. If we created another slide environment after this, it would put the content on a different slide page. You can use environments for things like sections or subsections in your document. It's like if you had an introduction and then a conclusion, you could make those in different environments with a different kind of section. You can also do things like lists and tables in environments, which can be pretty useful, especially for resumes, which we'll talk about in a bit. And also you can have comments in LaTeX. They work a lot like Python, except the comment character is a it's not parentheses. I'm blanking on the name for a second. %. Jesus, sorry about that. Everything after the %, including the %, won't be rendered. It's just a comment. So like I could have another begin document thing over here. And since that's commented out, that's fine. It's not going to change anything in the document. So that's some real basics about LaTeX that we can go over with the slides. Next up, to go over some more advanced LaTeX commands and constructs, I'm going to open up the RITSEC Constitution in Overleaf so we can look through that, since the Constitution is written in LaTeX. And at the end of this, I'll also show you how to open the Constitution in Overleaf from GitHub if you want to mess around with it and make your own amendments. Hey. So we talked about environments, document class. So like I said, the document class is usually the first command in every main LaTeX document. There's a series of document classes that you can use, like I'm just going to change this for real quick. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry about that. Vim key bindings are a little weird. A lot of times you'll see stuff like articles. That's a pretty common default one. If you're doing something for a school project, you might want IEEE transaction. That'll give you the IEEE format. But you can also define custom document classes. And right here, we're using a Constitution document class that's defined in this .cls, this .class file. So if we click on this, we can see inside this class file, what it's going to do, is define some custom commands that we can use in the Constitution for having different kinds of header files for our sections. And we can also change how, in different lists, change how the labels appear. So like changing the bullet points to be something different. So you can use custom classes to really customize the look and feel of your document. You can add new commands if you want, new environments even, to change things up, change up the look and feel of your document. Okay, take a little break to look at some of the questions in Twitch chat. Is this a game to see how many times you could say LaTeX? Yeah, good point. Yeah. Another one, Newman introduces anarchy. Yeah, very funny. Moving on, if we have any actual questions, feel free to put them in Twitch chat or in the questions channel in Discord. I'll be looking at both of those. So we talked about custom document classes. I'll talk about packages a little bit later, but so I mentioned environments. Something that you might have noticed in the slides document that I had that's also here in the Constitution is this document environment. And this is an environment that should be in every LaTeX document. Anything within this environment is what will actually be rendered. So if you're familiar with HTML, it's kind of like the body tag. Anything outside of the body tag in HTML usually isn't rendered. So if I typed some stuff over here and saved this this gobbledygook would not appear in the final compiled PDF. Everything that you want to appear has to happen within this document environment. So this is the main file for the Constitution. So we can see the document class, a little bit of a preamble here, some metadata that's used by some commands later on, and then our document environment. Cool. One other thing that you can do, you can see a lot of things here, a lot of these input commands. If you want to split up your document into multiple files, you can do that with input. So for here we have input terms.txt, and what this is going to do is basically take the content of this terms.txt document and insert it into the document here when you compile. If you're familiar with C, this is kind of like preprocessor includes. So if we look at this terms.txt document, that's what we're inputting. We can see it's just an itemized list of a bunch of terms that get used in the Constitution. So that'll just get inserted right here for when the Constitution gets compiled. So one way of doing that is just providing the file name with the extension. You can also provide to the input command relative paths. So like we have this Constitution folder that contains all the various articles. And note that the extension, the file extension .txt is optional. So here we're including it, here we're not. It's up to you, however you feel most comfortable, whatever you think looks best. So you can see we're including Article 1 of the Constitution. So that just defines what the name of the club is. And you can also nest these. So like in some of these bylaws articles, there are inputs within inputs. So like, for example, the programs, those are all included within the articles. So you can do kind of a lot with LaTeX. It's pretty cool. This is the Constitution. If you want to take a look at it more, I'll show you how to open it in Overleaf in a bit. But first, since this is a resume talk, let's talk about how the LaTeX can be useful for resumes. So here's my resume. I uploaded it into LaTeX. We'll take a little peek at it. And the first thing that I want to note with these comments is template files. If you're going to do a resume, just like if you had a Word document resume, if you're doing one in LaTeX, I would highly recommend finding a LaTeX template for a resume. Sometimes they're called CVs. There's a bunch of them online. I'll go over a couple of good websites like Latex Templates that you can use. I found this template and I kind of modified it myself a little bit. We can see a lot of the same things, like you've got the document class, you've got the document environment. So it's pretty much, your normal LaTeX stuff here. But a couple of things I just want to mention that show up in here that weren't in the previous documents is, for example, packages. In LaTeX, you can use packages just like any other programming language. And like any other programming language, this will make it easier. Packages make it easier for you to do things that you could normally do in the language yourself, but might be a little bit complicated or more difficult to do. They kind of abstract that away from you. So with this package, geometry right here, I'm just, as you can see, kind of modifying the document margins to be just exactly what I want. You could do this with, I think, optional parameters in the document class or a few other ways, but I just did it this way because it's a lot simpler for me to do. And I honestly Googled it on Stack Overflow, and that's what it told me to do. So that's one way you can use packages to kind of abstract away some of the more hard stuff of LaTeX. Other packages like multi-call will include environments for you to use later. So this multi-call environment, if we scroll down here, we can see that I'm beginning a multi-calls environment. And this just lets me create, it lets me tell LaTeX to put whatever I'm defining whatever content, like this list here. I can tell it, all right, put this into 2 columns. And you can define however many columns you want. You can do 3, 4, whatever. But for here, I'm just using 2 columns, which allows me to split this list into 2 bullets. So if I pull up what the resume actually looks like, sorry if this is a little hard to see, but you can see I have 1 bullet for the languages that I know, and then another bullet for some of the tools and software that I know. And since I have this multi-calls environment here, it splits it out into 2 columns to save a little bit of space. So that's one cool thing that packages can do. They can add environments that are useful. Um, another thing that packages can do, like this hyperref package, is add commands for you to use that didn't previously exist. So this hyperref package adds an href command, which allows you to add hyperlinks, which if you're printing out your resume isn't super helpful, but if you're sending somebody a PDF, they would be able to click the link in the PDF. For example, if you want to have a link to GitHub, you just provide the link description here and where it's going to link to. And if you are familiar with Markdown, this is the equivalent Markdown to create this href link. I find it very useful in my contact information to use a hyperlink for my GitHub account, which brings me to contact information. Another thing that I think is pretty interesting or pretty useful is to include your contact information in a separate input file. So here you can see I have my contact in a separate file. I think it's contact.txt, yeah, right here. And this will define my email and my GitHub account. This is useful if, like me, you want to put your resume up on GitHub, but you don't necessarily want to have all your contact information up publicly on GitHub. You can track all of your other documents, like your class file and your LaTeX file, in Git, but you could create a git ignore, which is exactly what I have, that ignores this contact.txt file. So that contact information will never go up on GitHub, but when you clone it down and create your contact info, you can compile it and have your contact information there, just like you see. Whoa, right there. I've got my email and my GitHub account up at the top under my name. So that's something neat. Also, maybe if you have some sensitive information in your resume that you don't want up publicly, that's another way you could do that. Let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I think that's about it. Yeah, so I would recommend finding a template and checking it out and playing around with it a little bit to get something that you like. I've actually been using the same exact resume file and just adding to it for a few years now. So if I scroll down, you can see there's some things that I used to have in my resume that I don't have, like this this home lab project. I don't have that listed on my projects anymore just because I didn't have enough space. So I really like LaTeX because it lets you comment out some old things that maybe you don't want to include on your resume anymore, like an old home lab project that you aren't really working on. Or maybe if you have some old work experience that maybe isn't as relevant, like if you worked at a Five Guys when you were in high school, maybe that isn't super relevant if you've had a couple co-ops and you're looking for a full-time job. But if you want to keep it in there, you can just comment it out and it won't get rendered, which I think is a pretty neat feature. Last couple of things, and then I'll let you all go. If you want to look at the Constitution, like I mentioned, what you can do is just go to the Constitution on GitHub, github.com/ridsec.constitution. And obviously, you could just open up the files and look at them, but I mean, it's not dark theme. It's not as nice to edit. So what I would recommend is forking the repository to your personal GitHub account. I've already done this, so I'm not going to do it again. And then once you've forked it, you can go into Overleaf, click New Project, and then just import it from GitHub. Connect your GitHub account, and then you can scroll through and look for the Constitution. I've got it right here. And then you can import it to Overleaf. It'll add an Overleaf project. And then you can open it up, edit it, make your changes. I don't remember off the top of my head, but there's some way that you can push a new commit in Overleaf with your changes, which is pretty nice. So if you want to make an amendment to the Constitution, that's one way you could do it with Overleaf. Um, Also, if you want like a template to get started, when you click on New Project in Overleaf, they've got a bunch of templates, like a bunch of resume templates. Well, you can see there's a lot of pages. There's a lot of templates out here. I personally prefer Latex Templates. You can check it out. They've got a bunch of different things, maybe for writing an article. They have CVs. And if you're looking for an awesome template, like, ooh, awesome template, says it's awesome, it must be awesome. You can check it out, see what it might look like, and then it gives you a nice button to open it up in Overleaf so you can get started and check it out. If you want to look at my resume, I have it up on my GitHub, s-newman/resume. And that's about it. So finally, before we're done, I just want to pay the cat tax. That's always required for presentations. I don't see any questions in Discord or, oh, we got one question in Twitch chat. Where else can you find resources to learn more about using LaTeX? The Overleaf website has some pretty good resources on using LaTeX. It's more of a high level guide, but it's pretty useful. I'm not sure, it might be under like a Overleaf wiki, but if you search some stuff on the Overleaf site, you can find more resources for learning more about LaTeX. There's also a LaTeX wiki that provides some pretty in-depth descriptions on how to do more complicated stuff with LaTeX. Hope that answers your question, Dedzo. I don't see any other questions at the moment, but feel free to drop them in Discord or shoot me a message on Discord or Workplace later, and I'd be happy to answer your questions. But that's all for me. Thank you, everybody.
Awesome.